Welcome, everyone. My name is Laura Parings. I'm the Director of Programs and Education at Rare Book School. And Evan?
I'm Evan Cheney. I'm the Program Manager, and I'm glad to be with you here to tell you all about the MC Lang Fellowship in Book History, Bibliography, and Humanities Teaching with historical sources. So potentially you guys could be the fourth cohort of fellows.
All right, so we have some slides that we'll queue up here. All right, so just a little bit of background about the fellowship to kick us off. I think it's helpful to know. We can head back one slide. There we go. I think it's helpful to know a bit about the root of this fellowship, as it does play into a lot of the particulars of things like the eligibility and the goals of the fellowship. So the MC Lang Fellowship is funded by an individual named Mr. Michael Lang, who was an undergraduate back in the day at a small liberal arts school. And though he wasn't a humanities student, one of his classes took a trip to the Special Collections Library one day, and the librarian gave a presentation using original historical sources and shared a lot of information about what we can learn from those objects, what we can glean about the people who made them, and what it tells us about human history, about culture. And this was a transformative experience for Mr. Lang. It opened his mind in a way that affected him for the rest of his life. And he wants, with this fellowship, to train today's teachers, librarians, archivists, etc., to help create similar experiences for today's undergraduate students. And so that's the reason why the fellowship focuses on fellows who are teaching at small universities and small liberal arts colleges, and particularly those working with undergraduate students. And so the goal of this fellowship is to reanimate humanities teaching by equipping educators. And by that, we mean professors, librarians, archivists, people who don't really fit into one of those categories very neatly. For example, somebody maybe who's working in a digital humanities position, and taking the opportunity to equip those instructors with the skills to enlarge their students' historical sensibilities through bibliographically informed instruction with original historical sources. And I've already talked about the importance of the small liberal arts colleges and universities, but the goal really can be boiled down to inculcate wonder amongst undergraduate students.
So the fellowship includes a few things. Tuition waivers for 2 Rare Book School courses. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but basically it's going to be 1 course in each of the 2 years of the program, and the tuition will be waived for those courses. You'll also get an annual stipend of $1,500 for travel, housing, food, or whatever other expenses you might want to incur over the course of your time in the program. There's also an opportunity for matching funds. So you'll have up to $1,000 in each year of the program. So the way that works is your institution, you apply for up to $1,000 or more, and the Lang Fellowship will match up to 1,000 of those dollars. And basically the goal there is to use that money to build the book historical community at your institution. So that can be used for something like teaching collection, or a speaker series, or a symposium, or whatever else you come up with. And we invite you to, partake of one of these projects with other Lang Fellows. So if you guys come up with something that you want to collaborate on, that's totally okay. And the funds will go towards that.
So we've mentioned community building a couple of times. This is a key component of the Lang Fellowship, but it's not just about building the community at the individual institutions or amongst the undergraduate students. It's also about building community amongst the Lang Fellows. and particularly within each of the cohorts, because you'll be taking a class together as the first step of the fellowship. And that's it's about building a support system between the fellows and an opportunity to collaborate with each other, because this will really strengthen what you're able to do, and you can continue to help learn from each other, and provide that support to make sure that these communities really thrive. A lot of our fellows, as you may have seen on the website, we've had years where we've awarded fellowships to two people from the same college, and we've had years and even across the cohorts, people at proximate universities, so schools that are really close together, are often working together with the way that they're using their matching funds in particular. And so we have a quote here from one of our past Lang Fellows, who was talking about the way that he and some of his colleagues were working on putting together a speaker series together that's been running this year, and it's been really wonderful to see that come together, and so many of the institutions partaking of that. So community, not just about the students, but also about the fellows.
So as I said, we're gonna quickly walk through what the courses are for the Lang. So the first one is H165, which is History, Bibliography, and Humanities Teaching, and that's taught by our director, Michael Suarez. So this one is required, and basically you have to be able to take this course during the time that it will be offered in your first year. The good news is that you're guaranteed admission because it's only open to Lang students. H165 basically kind of combines basic bibliography with kind of teaching you and talking about how to teach with primary source printed books. So, you'll be working closely with books to learn about how best to use them in the classroom. However, the second course is not required. You can take it as an elective, whatever you want. So that's basically one full-length course, which we do encourage you to take in person. But if there's an online course, they tend, sometimes they're shorter courses, you're allowed to take 2 short courses instead. The only exception is you can't take H90, Teaching the History of the Book, because it's very similar to H165.
Yeah, just to clarify there, the second class is a requirement of the fellowship, but we don't require a particular class. I'm sure everybody caught that, but I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly what the date of that class is going to be just yet. We are still working on the summer 2023 schedule. It's very close, so we're hoping that it'll be, we plan to be announcing that in November. And so if there's a problem with a date as things move forward, we can be in conversation and find the best solution. The multiplier effect is our next topic here. And so I don't know if any of you, I know at least one person here has taken a rare book school class before. You may have heard us talking about this while you were on site, but it's a goal of rare book school in general, and it's a particular goal of the Lang Fellowship, that people who come to rare book school take what they learn and then share it with others, in the hopes that those other people might have an opportunity to share it again with others. So we want to be continuing to build that community of bibliography and book history. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're working on your application materials. The selection committee will want to hear about your plans for being a multiplier. And so let's talk about eligibility next, as we start moving towards the application process proper. So the qualifications for eligibility are listed on our website. This is a screenshot of that page. It's the fellowship is open to full-time tenured faculty, full-time tenured track faculty who have passed the third-year review or the equivalent. We've heard from a number of applicants over the years who have like maybe it's a second year review or maybe it's fourth year review. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me directly or email rbs_lang@virginia.edu, and we will happily look over the qualifications with you. Also eligible are full-time library or curatorial staff members, archival staff members, or like say that DH person perhaps, who is a full-time employee at a liberal arts college or small university in the United States. We roughly define small as less than 5,000 undergraduate students. We will be flexible. We want to err on the side of allowing more applicants in to make sure that people who are going to be really great fellows are able to apply. So in addition to that, let's see, there's the restriction about sort of what qualifies in terms of undergraduate-ness of the school. So individuals who are working at universities that award earned doctorates in a humanities field are not eligible, because we really need this to be focused on undergraduate education. And so that type of school is what Mr. Lang wants to be supporting. That said, we've had some people asking questions about like, but there's like a PhD in education, and we will probably allow that. I think that's what we did in the past. And so if there's a pharmacy school, for example, that gives a PhD, or a law school or a med school attached to the school where you work, that's fine. We just don't want to see applications coming from people where there are English history, art history type degrees being awarded. Also, anyone who is based in a school outside of the United States is not eligible. Anyone who has previously taken more than 2 rare book school courses, or who has taken that H90 teaching the history of the book, because it is so similar to the H165 course, are not eligible, and probably not relevant for anybody here, but anybody who has been a past or present member of the Rare Book School full-time year-round staff is not eligible. So alas, Evan and I will never be able to apply. So the application process, Evan is going to walk you through how to find the application and start putting it together.
Okay, yeah. So the slide, I'm going to go through a series of slides. So unfortunately, it takes a couple steps to get to where you need to go to actually apply. So I'm going to try and make this as clear as possible, but feel free to circle back in the comments, in the questions. Sorry. You can also write in the comments to ask us, to repeat any of this. So just to let you know, that hyperlink at the bottom, all the information is on the Lang portal, like on our website. So this is all going to be written down as well. But the first step is, once you navigate to the RBS website and you find the Lang, so admissions and awards, fellowships, find Lang, you'll come to this page. But basically, you can also just go straight into RBS in the upper right-hand corner from the main homepage. And you can see on the screen right now where that is. So click on that, and you'll land on a page that looks like this, which is our login page. And so from here, basically, if you already have an RBS account, if you've already taken a class with us, you can just use your information to sign in. If you haven't taken a class with us before, that's awesome. This could be your first time. That would be really exciting. What you'll need to do is go into the Need an Account at the very bottom right under the login. So it's a little bit small, but that's where you would need to go. So once you have typed in your information, you'll come to a page that looks like this, which is where you'll sort of land in my RBS for the applications for scholarships and fellowships. And usefully, we've labeled it "click here." So you'll just go to that hyperlink right there, click here, and just click there. Pretty straightforward. And then you'll land on this page, which is a list of the scholarships and fellowships that we have. And you can see that Lang is on the right at the top of this page. So once you're here, you just kind of scroll all the way down and you'll see where it says click here to apply for the Lang Fellowship. That's where you go next. And that'll take you to Interfolio, which is how we process these applications. So you'll click on the Apply Now button. And then you'll have to use your Interfolio account to sign in. So again, if you already have an Interfolio account, you can just use that information. If you do not, you can go ahead and create an account at the bottom there. One thing we want to point out here is that you do not need to pay for an Interfolio account if you don't have one. So definitely, if you come across something asking you to pay anything, don't fall for their tricks. You don't need to. Yeah, you don't need to pay for anything. It should be free. And then one last thing to note is Interfolio actually uses, because we're using their system, if you have any issues with the Interfolio side of things, you can go to this link on the Lang part of the application that I showed you earlier. You can see where I've circled it on the web page there, Interfolio support page. That's how you can get help with anything that's related to the Interfolio side of things. Hopefully you don't run into anything.
All right, so once you're inside, you can find, you will have the opportunity to submit your application materials. You can find a detailed summary of what those application materials are on that MC Lang Fellowship informational page that we saw during that process, this first page that we saw. It gives you the full version of the essay questions ahead of time so that you can prep that and everything before you get into Interfolio. The application is not too complicated. We ask that you fill in 2 forms that are loaded into the Interfolio system. One is just a contact information form so that we know who you are and how to reach you. And then there's the eligibility form, which is simply to confirm that you are not ineligible according to any of the qualifications that we just went over. You will also be asked to upload a curriculum vitae. We don't have like a page limit set for that, so we always appreciate seeing more information. I am a member of the selection committee for this fellowship, and so my fellow committee members and I appreciate seeing the details of your work, so feel free to be detailed. Invite a colleague to submit a confidential letter of recommendation for you. We'll talk a little bit more about who would be a good person to submit that letter of recommendation, but I will say here that there is an option within Interfolio for that system to send an email with a link to your recommender so that they can upload their letter without having to go through you or through Rare Book School to do so. I will confess that the first time I went through this just to check that the application process was working correctly, I missed the step where I could enter in that information. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to rbs_lang and we'll help you out with that. If there is a particular problem with somebody submitting that letter, they can always just email it to rbs_lang@virginia.edu with a small explanation, and we will attach it to the application after the deadline when we're putting together all of the PDF information. So the other piece, the big piece of the application is 4 short essays. We do ask that you submit 4 separate essays rather than combining all of the questions into one long essay. So Interfolio will ask you for 4 uploads. You'll run into problems if you've only uploaded 1. So just be aware. And so those questions, we have highlighted versions here on this slide. Basically, we want to know why you want to be part of the MC Lang Fellowship program. And what interests you most about participating in Rare Book School's courses and what you hope to gain from them. Describe your experiences of and commitment to undergraduate education, because that is such a key component of this fellowship. How does working in a liberal arts environment contribute to your efficacy? And the last question then is, how might you work with others to help create an educational culture of book historical humanities teaching with original sources? You may find that you'll be repeating yourself a little bit between those essays. We have asked 4 versions of this in order to get as much information as we can in order to evaluate the applications thoroughly. All right. And so then the letter of recommendation, Evan.
So yeah, as Laura mentioned, I'll be repeating some of what she said, but essentially the letter should be written by a colleague who can speak to your suitability for the Lang. So specifically things that they might want to speak to are your teaching, outreach, impact potential, dedication to teaching with primary sources, interest in bibliography, book history, and also if they can throw in something about how you're a teacher who can inculcate wonder, that would be something that would speak highly to your skills. As Laura said, you can submit, you can have your recommenders submit through the Interfolio portal, but if they should run into any issues, just have them email the letter to rbs_lang@virginia.edu. That's basically where any questions can go as well. And we can accept letters a little bit later, but try and have them in by the deadline if possible.
Yeah, it takes a day or 2 for us to process the applications, and we will send out emails trying to track down any missing letters of recommendation once the deadline passes. If you know that the letter is going to be late, or the recommender knows that it's going to be a little late, please do just send us an email so that we know to expect it and to reach out if we still haven't gotten it in time. And so the letter of support at the finalist stage, you will have probably seen a reference to this on the website. So once we've reached a stage of offering the fellowship, or if we have a stage when we will do sort of a finalist round, we have not always, but we will ask for a letter of support from somebody at your institution. This usually is your supervisor or the head of your department. Sometimes the person applying is the supervisor, head of the department. There's kind of, we hit the kind of, who do I go to from here? So somebody who can speak to guarantee that the school will provide support in terms of the time off to take the classes, support the efforts for the community building projects, and then the funding, so that they understand that there is an expectation that applications will be submitted for matching funds. And so that will be a necessary part of the process. One of you may have asked in the registration process form if it's all right if the letter of recommendation and the letter of support come from the same person. And yes, it is totally fine if those come from the same person. All right, so the selection process. We have a committee made up of a variety of professionals from professorial track backgrounds as well as library backgrounds, and connected to liberal arts schools and small universities, and we will read through all of the applications. We normally are able to contact finalists in January with the results of the process, and then we'll contact everyone who has applied once we have the cohort of 10 fellows confirmed. And so we are looking for applications that can indeed speak very strongly to why, basically your passion for undergraduate education, your interest in teaching with primary sources, original historical sources. These can be manuscript, print, born digital, whatever it happens to be. It could be digitized things. It doesn't have to be born digital. So it's your interest in bringing book historical bibliographical approaches into the classroom with either your students, if you are the instructor in semester-long classes, or if you are a librarian, an archivist, what have you. We're looking for evidence of some thoughtfulness about how you would intend to use things like the matching funds. You do not have to give the full pitch of the, or if you make a stab at saying like, we're going to do an exhibition on paper in the world, you don't have to stick with that if it turns out that that's not what you want to be doing. The matching fund requests will, in fact, not be required until after you've taken your first class, H-165. So you have plenty of time to figure out the details of that. We just want to see that you're thinking about concrete plans, that you're thinking about how you might collaborate with the people around you, if that's other faculty members, if it's members of the library and archives, the DH community, printing professionals, book artists in your area. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who is at your home institution. And we're looking for sort of, that evidence of collegiality and collaborative spirit. And if you have any other particular questions about the application process, please do let me know. We've had a wonderful variety of professionals coming through as fellows, and it's been really great seeing how they've been able to learn from each other, especially if they do have different interests, different backgrounds, different areas of expertise, different levels of their career, and helping each other to learn. So we're looking for good cohort members, as well as the individuals who can go back and really be rock stars, or quiet rock stars are fine, but who can make an impact at their home institution. All right, and Mike, Evan, if you want to talk about the experience of being a Michael Lang Fellow.
Yeah, so just to sort of echo what Laura was saying, we have a quote here from a current Lang Fellow, sort of describing their experience being a Lang Fellow. And again, hopefully, hopefully your experience as a Lang Fellow will be one of sort of rich collaborative community learning. And we've already sort of hinted at a few ways that's been done in the past. Currently, there are a few projects that Lang Fellows are working on that sound really interesting. Again, just to kind of give you more specific examples of things that you might do, maybe get the creative juices flowing a little bit. Panel discussions about book history, creating a faculty learning community. So getting together with a group of colleagues in different departments a couple times a month and just sharing conversation about a text or whatever. A transcribe-a-thon. I'm actually not entirely sure what that is, but it sounds awesome. And as well as a speaker series. And then also we've got a speaker workshop series. So, kind of similar sets of things, but you can do a lot within those profiles to sort of fit whatever you're interested in, and especially what your colleagues and your students are interested in as well.
We also had quite a few people, especially with their first batch of matching funds, requesting them so that they could build up or improve their teaching collection. So we've had people looking for examples of different printing surfaces or different types of books to use in the class, and making that available to the wider teaching community at the school as part of an effort to enable other faculty members, other librarians, and archivists to do the teaching with those same materials. So yeah, it's a very flexible process for applying for the funds, and it's really about what will enable the fellows to have maximal impact, as our boss Michael Suarez would say. So it's a really wonderful opportunity, and it's been really wonderful this past year for Evan and I and the rest of us at Rare Book School to have met our fellows in person for the first time, because the first two cohorts ended up going through kind of at the same pace in 2021, starting off online and then doing their first in-person courses just this past summer. So we're hopeful that our courses will be in person, as well as continuing our online offerings for next year. So we're looking forward to seeing some more new faces. So any questions? As we've said, that's the magic email address, rbs_lang@virginia.edu. But we'll kick over to some Q&A. And I'm gonna start quickly by answering one of the questions that came through on the registration form, which was when the course schedule will be available and the course is open for when the course applications will open. I mentioned that the course schedule is still in progress. We're hoping that it will be announced this month. Course applications for next summer will open in early January, and the first round deadline for those will be February 20th. So there's plenty of time to submit the application after hearing the news about the fellowship. And if you have any questions about particular classes, feel free to reach out to us and we'll share what we can as we're working on putting together the final version of who fits into which week. All right, any other questions from the group?
I have a question. Thank you so much. This is really informative. In the 4 questions for the application materials, is it helpful for the selection committee to hear anything about how this would also help the applicant's research, or is that just totally uninterested? Like, would you focus entirely on teaching, or would you sort of combine those?
It's a very good question. It is completely fine to mention your research because that's an important piece of what you do as a professional. I would avoid putting too much emphasis just on that. A nice balance of the research and what you're doing, and maybe if there's a way to neatly tie that back into, and then that will inform my teaching sort of style of working that in. I think that has been the most effective in the applications that we've seen. So feel free to mention it, but make sure that you're keeping the focus on the areas of interest for the fellowship.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Anyone else?
All right, this is a really small logistical question, but since you were just talking about when the applications open, but in your first year, you would just be doing the sort of the one that everybody's in, would you need to submit a formal application for the particular course in your first year?
Yes, also a good question. So we will ask you to put in the application, not only because that's how we figure out who's going to be attending and create your name tags and things like that, but also that's helpful for Michael Suarez as he's preparing how to best tailor the course for the fellows in that particular year. It's great if he can be reminded a little bit about, like, he will have had an opportunity to read over the applications from the fellows, from the fellowship application, that is, but reading the course applications will really inform the way that he, which examples he brings in and things like that. Michael is one of those, he's a professor in the English department here at UVA, but he's one of those instructors who keeps things very responsive and very tailored, and he will have hundreds of books available at his fingertips in the classroom from our collection, so that he can immediately be like, ah, you're 18th century, and I'm going to bring out this satire, and we're also going to look at this 19th century dramatic piece that nobody has ever heard of before, and we're going to compare these together. So it's just going to put in a plug. Michael's a great teacher, so it's worth it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this presentation, which was very helpful. I've noticed that in the past, a lot of the fellows have been in English, history, library. Is there any concern with people who are outside of those fields but are still in humanities?
I can't think of a particular concern that has arisen. We simply tend to get a lot of applications from those fields. Is there a particular field that you're asking about?
I'm in music, so I was
Oh,
concerned that
wonderful.
perhaps
Mhm.
people might shy away from, I don't know if you have a lot of music resources or if you consider that something too different from what you typically teach.
Not necessarily, as long as the application makes clear that that you would be able to one, that there's a class that is, because we don't have a very good music-based course as your second course as an elective. So making sure that you are kind of emphasizing the work with the original materials, and the way that the class will have a bookish component that can be things like musical scores, or books about maintenance of organs, or whatever it happens to be. So there, we would welcome that application. And if you have any particular questions as you're working on your application, please do feel free to reach out.
I have a question about use of the matching funds, or I guess ongoing work as a fellow.
Mhm.
Is there precedent, or is there any, I guess, requirement that the funds be used by the fellow and by kind of professional collaborators, or could you use it for student growth and an internship situation, or kind of student teaching?
We have not had a question about something like student teaching come up yet. It is possible, like the funds will generally be dispersed to the department or institution that you worked for, rather than to you directly. And we do that mostly so that it doesn't count as income and you don't get taxed for it. And so as long as the funds are being used to support the building of the book community, I don't see a problem with it.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Very good question. So that first class, the H-165, will always be offered in Charlottesville unless we have to go to an online version again. And so Charlottesville will be running a couple of other classes at the same time. And so it's really fun, I think, as somebody who has also been a student at RBS, to get to meet the students in the other classes as well as in your own class. And we always make sure that there are dormitories available so that there's cheaper housing. Charlottesville, the area around the university, or grounds, as we call it with a capital G, is pretty walkable. And so there's plenty of restaurants, and there's a trolley, which is a bus made up to look like a trolley that runs down to the downtown mall. So it's easy to get down to some of the antiquarian bookshops while you're in town and things like that. And we have evening lectures, etc. But for the second class, it's entirely possible that you might end up going to one of our remote partner institutions. And so we are expanding the number of classes that we're doing at remote partner institutions again this year. So we have a couple of new partnerships that are coming to fruition this year, and a few more in line for the future years. So it's also great to go in and learn from the different collections that other institutions have that we just can't match here at UVA and RBS. So things to look forward to, perks, dangle the carrot out there.
I have a follow-up question, I guess, related to housing and some of those other things to think about. Are there any kind of restrictions to outside other funding? If I were to apply for kind of an internal grant from my college to be used for housing, could, I guess, the funds from the program still be used, or are there kind of limits to how that's used?
Again, this question, that's a good one. That one hasn't come up before. With the way that the funds are dispersed and because we don't have to report on strict usage of this to an external funding body, for example, I would say that yes, it would be fine if you received additional funding. The $1,500 stipend each year, you request it, we disperse it. We do not ask you to send a report of how you use it. So if you need $500 to pay for books for your class, I hope that's not the case for any of our classes. That's fine, because maybe your plane ticket is going to cost closer to $1,000 depending on where you're coming from in the country. So yeah, that's totally fine. We will not ask for any receipts or justification of how you use the funds. Use them responsibly.
But we will ask for a report on the matching funds.
Yes, and how those get used more as a we want to know what's going on and what's being effective and what maybe isn't working as quite as well, and so that we can help to guide future fellows through their projects. Right. Just going to give a quick shout out, Rebecca. It's nice to see you here. I haven't seen you in kind of really, I don't think since New Haven a couple of years ago when you were taking a class. So
yeah, it's been a while.
Hope you're doing well. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more question. I really appreciated the slide that had the examples of how the matching funds are used. Are there any other sort of examples that you were particularly excited about in an application, or that somebody ended up doing for using those matching funds?
I thought there was one that was much more on the book arts side of things, if I'm remembering correctly, that there was an opportunity to bring in a printer who may have been doing, this was a while ago, so my memory is a bit fuzzy, but basically to do a hands-on experience for the students. And I think that there were multiple classes that were able to benefit from this. Similarly, we had one of the recent pieces of the lecture series that's going on was the speaker who was brought into one of the institutions was then able to also go in and do guest speaker events within particular classes that were related to his area of expertise. And so it's great to see sort of the broad, you can come, you can sit in, you can watch it online, it's streamed, we'll record it, and there's the opportunity for the undergraduates to really engage with that expert who is brought in on something that is maybe not represented very well by any of the faculty at that particular school. And so those types of, I happen to be a bit of, I'm a little bit biased towards experiences like printing demonstrations because I enjoy them so much myself. But I think that those sorts of opportunities, but even the building blocks of things like working on the teaching collections are so important. for so many of our fellows, because we've had applications and from people, and some have been awarded the fellowships where they're at institutions that don't have very many materials to teach with. They might not have a designated special collections library, or if they do, it's very small and there's one staff person. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that circumstance with the types of schools that we're working with here. And so it's all really exciting, the way that people are framing the way that they're going to use the funds.